Hello. Here with your mom. That's right, it's a moment of Muppy. I guess it's a good pun. Yeah, so what's up? I'm gonna tell you what's up. I went to McDonald's, and it was $11 for 2 large fries and an iced tea. And I'm laughing at this because I genuinely think it's funny to watch everything just fall apart. And I know that sounds weird, but McDonald's is probably going to fall apart. Not too quickly. There's other places that'll fall apart more quickly. Like a lot of the hardware stores. Why is my mouth doing that? I must have set my camera up wrong. Well, no time to fix it. It seems we're going to have to run with it. Yeah, so I went to Best Buy, which is my hobby. I go to Best Buy and don't buy things. I also cook and eat dogs, which is why you're hearing the many dogs of the kennel. But enough about my diet. I was eating food at McDonald's. Wait a minute. Yeah, I guess that is still about my diet. Anyway, McDonald's has a lot of problems. Namely being that you can go to any store around here and buy a bag of French fries for $20 that'll last you a whole week, thicker cut, and you can buy better seasoning for it than the... Gee, what is it that McDonald's has put on their fries for the past... Oh, since I was born? Oh, salt. That's it. Now, salt is good, don't get me wrong. But no, we can do better than this. So yeah, so you're talking like pennies on the dollar in comparison to what you're spending at McDonald's. And then their hamburgers just aren't even like bad good anymore. They used to be at least good in a bad way, in a like, these are terrible for you and make you feel sick, but they're tasty, and they're not even tasty anymore. Like it used to be fun to get them plain and just be like, ooh, the patty itself is like nice and it's like salted down and everything, but it's still got flavor to it. And no, not anymore. Now it's like, oh, cover it up. Got to cover it up with some kind of topping. Their bread, of course, is not as good as it used to be. I don't know. I don't think it matters too much. I mean, the lines are still semi-long there. But I don't think it's going to last because I don't think people want to spend... What was it? What was the total for my French fries? It was like $7. $7.50 or something for 2 large fries. And I was only buying them to bring home as a side for some hamburger steaks that I was cooking at home. Like, I could have gotten hamburgers there at the Mickey D's. And instead I opted for just some French fries. And if anyone wants to say that like the quality of French fries or the quality of McDonald's has not gone down in the past decade, 2 decades or so, no, I eat there all the time. Like, especially, like, my last few years of college and first few years not at college, I went to fast food places all the time. Practically lived off of them. And all of them have changed for the worst. There's not a single one I can think of that I think actually is worth it anymore. And then we have the case of Best Buy. Yeah, this is just rants now. This is there was a Best Buy nearby me that I would go into, and they had this huge floor, but like no shelving anywhere, nothing on the floor for them to be selling to make money off of me. And that Best Buy closed pretty quickly. Like, they were a very wide area, a very big showroom with nothing to sell. And now the Best Buy, the good Best Buy that was even closer to me, the one I went to all the time, the one I still go to, just recently, they had a bunch of scissor lifts, people fixing stuff in the roofs and moving displays around. They pulled a bunch of cabinets. Like, I was in there and they had caution tape everywhere. And the caution tape was, it was surrounding like the cell phone area and a few other places. They were restructuring. And so I go back in today, and they have less shelving, less stuff on display for the cell phone area. And like they had like 20 things in the same area where they now have 7. And I'm just looking at this like, wait a minute. Is this what happened to the other place? Because as I stood there and looked around, it was like, the floor space there's a ton of empty floor space again. So they're just not selling us things. And I don't know how they're going to make enough money to stay in business and pay the rent. The extortionary rent I'm sure they're paying to be on mall property, especially when I guess the news hit a while ago that they were going to raise the rent on all the stores at that mall. So yeah, they'll all be gone. That's going to be an empty and deserted mall with a giant theater attached to it that'll probably also close down because there's an MJR right here that everyone goes to instead. Yeah, so I don't know. It's all kind of funny. And this is like fresh off of a couple months ago. This Best Buy just pulled all of their movies off the shelf. You can't go to Best Buy and buy movies here anymore. You can still buy video games, but the video game area is it's a pale comparison to what it used to be. And I've been around a while, and I remember when you would walk into a Best Buy and it was just filled to the brim with shelves of stuff that they were selling. There was an anime section that was probably at least as big as the average cell phone area in a Best Buy. And then it slowly got reduced to like 4 shelves, and then 2 shelves, and then 2 shelves with other movies mixed in that they were pretending were anime but were really just kids cartoons. Like you would see you would see like Full Metal Panic Fumofu, and on the same shelf there were Ninja Turtles and I don't know whatever else they were shilling at that time. And at the very end, it was like they didn't even have a section for anime anymore, which was disheartening enough. But they had all the movies just jumbled together, like new releases and everything. And it was like 5 Studio Ghibli movies, 2 of them new, the rest of them old. 1 or 2 popular random anime, like they might have a random season 2 DVD or Blu-ray of Naruto or One Piece. They wouldn't be able to get them in the right order or anything. And then they would be interspersed with either the latest Marvel movie or like some classic 80s movie that will actually sell, like the Blu-ray upscale edition of Ghostbusters 2. So, not a lot really going on in movies at Best Buy anymore, and it looks like they're like cutting their TV section in half too, which I would have thought maybe TVs were making them some money, but then again, if you look at the prices of TVs now, they're all dirt cheap. So there's no real high margin products that they're pushing other than, I don't know, tablets. I guess we can say cell phones, because whatever contracts they have worked out with the cell phone providers, they package your iPhone in with a plan so that people will actually be able to get the newest iPhones that are $1,100 to $1,500. And even that I don't think will last very long, because sooner or later people are going to look at... Like, I don't pay anything for... I pay virtually nothing for my cell phone. I think I'm paying, like, if you added it all together, $15 a month. And I don't have unlimited data, but I have so much data that I'm not going to use it all. And my internet on it works fine. I mean, I live in an area where if you go to the country, it's hard to get a signal with the services I'm using, but in general, everything works well. And then other people are like, oh yeah, I pay like $79 a month or $110 a month, and then God forbid they're like on some family plans, like, yeah, $200 a month for my whole family. That's crazy. It's... You need to cut them costs just like cutting cable costs, because first off, how are you possibly using unlimited data all the time. And even then, like, I mean, maybe you're watching Netflix on your phone all the time. I don't know, but is it really worth that much? I mean, I can wait till like, I watch YouTube on my phone all the time, so I'm definitely using a lot of data. I mean, I don't know if it's like downscaled to 480 when I'm just listening to it through earbuds with the screen off, but it gets the job done. And frankly, I've worked with enough I have worked with more than enough people who sit there watching Netflix when they're supposed to be working that I wouldn't mind seeing some of that disappear anyway. And my God, if you've ever worked for a car company on an assembly line, you would be amazed how many people aren't getting their jobs done because they're literally watching Netflix while they're supposed to be putting cars together on an assembly line. And so they're like half looking at their job, but mostly paying attention to their phone and listening to their earbuds. And it kind of ruins it for the rest of us, because I can work and listen to earbuds no problem, but then you end up working for all these companies that won't let you listen to your earphones while you're working because too many people don't pay attention to what they're doing. Yeah, you just end up surrounded by these people. It's like, everything here could be so much better if it wasn't for you. You ruin it for everyone. Yeah, so that's kind of how I'm thinking about it at the moment. But yeah, I think Best Buy is going to vanish from the face of the earth at some point. I think the hardware stores are really going to be in trouble. You go into them lately and there's no one there. Some of them just don't have good lumber. They're just stores collapsing all over the place. You look at the way they order their stuff. You look at the logistics of some of these companies, and like I know a company that will remain nameless. They schedule trucks, but they also allow trucks that aren't scheduled to pull into their dock and drop stuff off whenever they feel like it. Like sometimes they fax beforehand, like, hey, we'll be there in 15 minutes. And then the ones that are scheduled never show up when they're scheduled. I mean, what's the point of a schedule? And then you get people pulling into your dock, and the people who were scheduled get there, and they're like, well, we were scheduled to be here. Why is this person here? It's like, oh, well, because this company just lets people do whatever they want, and they should be charging a premium for anyone who wants to just roll up and use their dock. Like they should be like, no, you have to pay or something if you want to pull in early. Like they literally have enough parking lot space where they could just be like, no, you wait there. You came here too early. You didn't tell anyone you were coming. You wait there. We have a business to run. Except I think most businesses are being run by children these days. See Hollywood. See the game industry. See... Well, actually, the VTubers are doing a pretty good job, even though a lot of them are very young. So, actually, some of them are spot on. Thumbs up. But you can see that's kind of an independent thing, too. It's not a big company making horrible, horrible decisions. See Vince McMahon Jr., not Shane McMahon. Vince McMahon. Hello there, Atomic Red. I'm ranting. I'll be ranting for just another minute here. Nice to see you, though. Yeah, so you've got whom I shall refer to as Vince McMahon Jr., Bob Iger of Disney, and this guy. What a trip he is. Rants are why you followed. Well, rants are important, especially nowadays, when there's a lot for everyone to get off their chest. Yeah, I went through some stuff, some issues I had about Best Buy. Again, I think that's the third time I've ranted about Best Buy. But yeah, there's just there's a lot going on with people that are in charge of things. And I always call it the Vince McMahon effect, because he always had this problem where if it wasn't his creation, he only ever bought it or allowed it to appear on his shows to stomp a mud hole in it. Like when WWE acquired WCW, all of the wrestlers from WCW were maybe given a moment or two to shine, and then they were just made fools of after that. With like one or two exceptions of the absolute biggest stars that ever came from that company. But, you know, it's been so long since I've seen all that, I don't remember everything that happened, but I know that they basically made like DDP look like a fool. I think, I don't know, there was, when Paul Heyman had a lot of success on the Thursday night shows, when he was running Jericho and Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit as, you know, the three big stars of his show. And it wasn't something that Vince had done that was successful. So like, the moment Jericho won the Undisputed Championship, merging the titles, big moment for him. It was like the next week, I think they had him picking up dog crap for Stephanie McMahon. Not like in real life, like I don't think he would have done that. But as part of his show, as part of his story. And it was kind of obvious to anyone that was watching what was going on there. And this is kind of how Bob Iger acted with Disney for the most part. I mean, he acquired Pixar. And so it wasn't even his creation, but it was his acquisition. And so he wanted to remove parts of Disney World for the Pixar stuff, because that was his acquisition. And the other stuff was just the old Walt Disney stuff that he didn't really have any part of, other than, you know, running the company into the ground as it stands now. I think that maybe 30% of the problems in big corporations can be attributed to egos like that, and then probably another 50% just to people's political ambitions. Can I rant about the fall of the USSR? Yeah, I can a little bit. I don't really have a lot of the numbers and details on that. I mean, I have a lot of issues with a lot of the things that people did. Like, on the one hand, Reagan was brilliant for the way he got the USSR to spend its money into oblivion, ultimately destroying and bankrupting themselves. But that was also the start of, like, before him, a lot of presidents had, you know, basically printed a lot of money, so to speak. I mean, everyone says printed. There's a whole process behind how that happens. But basically more money comes into existence than existed before. And in the case of Reagan, he was one of the first ones to do really, really big spending. It was something to the tune of, was it? Oh, geez. Yeah, like I said, I don't have the numbers. I can't remember. And I was around at the time, but I just can't remember what these big numbers were. Was it 500 billion or something? Huge numbers at the time. And huge deficit spending. And supposedly, you know, he was doing it because by spending all that extra money, the USSR was desperate to look better than the US, and so they spent that money too. But when you have as much capital to fall back on as the United States used to have, like in the 1980s, the United States was such a rich country that we would have had nothing to worry about ever again if we had just stopped printing money. There's no reason that, you know, housing prices should have gone down. You can kind of see it in the electronic market. Most things electronic, you know, it's not super regulated. There's a lot of regulation in the electronics market. But because there's always new technology coming up, and so there's always a way to kind of skirt the laws that have been written before, electronics quickly become old quicker and cheaper before the speed of government can keep up to connive to keep the prices higher, which is a lot of what they do because backwards thinking partly, and partly because the people who do these sorts of things know exactly what they need to do to buy votes and stay in power. But, you know, electronics tend to come down in price, and cell phones are a good example. Like, I can buy a 2-year-old cell phone. Let's say, I'm going to just pick one at random, like the Motorola Razr. I think it's $700 for a new one, maybe $1,000 for the top of the line. But if you were to buy that same phone, only a 2-year older model, you could probably get it for $300 and it'd still be a great phone. You know, I don't know what they're like with the upkeep on security patches and everything, but for the most part, it's gonna be better than a $200 or $300 new phone that you would buy. So why would you buy the new phone instead of going back and buying the top of the line old phone? And I've done that a few times, and it's worked out pretty well. The only time it didn't was when I was still buying BlackBerry phones, and they decided that they were just not going to do good phones anymore out of nowhere. You can trace it to the exact moment that they said, hey, let's do Android. They had their own OS, and it was an excellent OS, and you're only just now seeing features on the like the iPhone and the Android that BlackBerry had back when I was using a Passport in 2014. God, I love that phone. It was the first and still the only time I actually felt like I was carrying a computer in my pocket. And what does all this have to do with the fall of the USSR? I don't know, but it was a good phone, and I miss it. I actually still have it. They really, once they stopped supporting the browser and you couldn't use the internet for much of anything on it, it stopped having its usefulness. One of these days I'm going to have to look up what poggers means, but I'm running with it. Poggers rant. The only thing I think the best context for poggers was the Chuck E. Cheese moment. That was my favorite poggers moment of all time. If you stream for like 2 hours and that's the only word you say and you look dead in the camera with a puppet as you say it, I don't know, there's something special about that. They should have really tried to like ride that enthusiasm. But yeah, the USSR largely fell because they tried to outspend the US and things like, I mean, they were already, you know, kind of doing that with the space race and everything. They made a lot of like interesting things happen in space and everything, but it was a horrible place to live. You know, it was nothing but people living in poverty and being hungry, and very caste-based system. You were either in the in-group or you were in the out-group, and like 97% of the people were in the out-group. And God forbid you steal a few potatoes and get a couple of tenors. But if you want more on that story, read a bit of Solzhenitsyn. Because that which does not kill you. And that's actually Nietzsche, but Solzhenitsyn wrote great stories about, well, great facts about the things that happened in the gulags. So, yeah, good stuff. Apart from that, I think maybe at some point I'll do a full economics rant. I'll get Korenic in here. We actually have other channels and podcasts where we talk about this stuff sometimes. And then I come on here and it's just like, no, I'm gonna play video games and make fun of Best Buy. That's about the extent of it. We do a writing podcast because we both write books too. Boy, that's another thing. So, like my brother's an artist. He's a really good artist too. He does a lot of things that I can't really tell you about because he has non-disclosure agreements. But good stuff, animation, drawing, lots of fun stuff. And I always tell him, you know, it might be rough being an artist, but look on the bright side. If you're on Twitter, you can put your artwork up and hundreds and even thousands of people will see it. There is absolutely no way that you can, like, as a writer, you can't really put anything up on Twitter because you have nothing to catch anyone's eye. Like, maybe you could put a piece of artwork up and then maybe, like, link to your book, but that tends not to work unless, you know, you've already got a following where people read your stuff. And even if you have a following, if people aren't reading your stuff, it's really hard even to get people who follow you to be like, oh yeah, I'll check this out. Like, I am or have been in lots of writer groups. You would be amazed. I mean, technically I've already doxed myself, so it doesn't really matter. Let's see. I don't really know a good way to put up what my books are, because I don't write under Muppy Heingart. I don't have a pen name. I write under my real name. I don't mind doxing myself either. but I wrote a book called The Good Guy, and it has a really, really bad cover, and I'm not Dean Koontz. So you should be able to find me based on that. But if not, let's see. I mean, I post it on Twitter all the time on the same account that I do this, so I'm not concerned about people knowing my real name. And yet I feel hesitant about saying it here because it just breaks character. But it's got a really bad cover. It's got a dude in the center, really badly drawn, and like two vampires on either side of him in a circle, and it's a really bad font. I used to have a good cover for it, and then I made a bad cover on purpose because I was just looking at everything on the shelves at the bookstore, like everything looks the same. And I think maybe next time I'll put it up there. I'll put up a picture of it. I'll get Kornick on here and we can talk about some writing. I mean, I can tell you the name of our podcast is The Wordy Pair. I do? I think I have 7, and 3 of them are very short. Actually, 5 of them are very short. Okay, so I have one book that is enormous. It's like twice the size of Jurassic Park. And then I have one book that is a pretty average novel length, about 60,000 words. And then I have 3 short stories that are like a couple pages. And then one book I think it's a novella, a 20,000 word novella. And then I think the other one is 30,000. So I've only written one really long one. I'm just finishing another pretty large one right now. I'm in the final paragraphs, and then I'm going to start the editing process. And I'm probably just going to start shilling them here because Twitter has been a no-go. And like I said, I don't care about doxing myself. Nobody in their right mind would come after me because I am a vicious, horrible person and a trained killer. So, have fun. But yeah, I'll get Kornick on here and we'll talk books. He's written a lot of books too. Or at least I think he's written one full-length book and he's written a lot of novellas. He writes really good hard sci-fi. It's not easy to find that stuff these days. Like there's a lot of... And I'm going to go ahead and do this because... Okay, so like indie authors, if I read their books and I don't like them, I tend to just not review them. Like I'm not going to say anything bad about an indie or a self-publishing author, especially one that like doesn't have readership. Which, you know, if someone comes to me personally and is like, hey, is this book any good? Yeah, then I'm going to tell them what I really think about it. But I'm not going to go on Twitter and, like, shoot someone down that's just trying to get started. But I will talk about books that have actually been successful, because there's nothing I can really say that's going to hurt those authors. And so I don't feel any problem criticizing them. And I just want to say that, like, Oh, I am going to write a Muppy Heingart book. It's coming. It's going to be my lore book. Instead of doing a lore video, it's going to be a lore book. I haven't decided if it's going to be long or like a novella yet, but it's going to be fun. More to the point, so like the person who wrote the 3-body problem, people call that hard sci-fi, and I hate that book with a passion you can only dream of. It's not really very hard sci-fi, but it is, I will give it points and say that it's sci-fi enough to fool people who don't know much about science into believing it might be hard sci-fi. But the hard sci-fi in it is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the premise alone that... And yeah, I'm going to spoil it here because, I mean, it's on Netflix, people. Just go read it or something. But like, this is seriously so stupid that you're not going to mind if I spoil it. You're just going to be... You might be angry like I was. These scientists are committing suicide in the book. And you find out the reason for their suicides is that they got results in experiments that made no sense. And to them, it appeared that science didn't work anymore. And this so depressed them that they started killing themselves. Now, Korenik is a scientist, and we talked about this and laughed about this because I brought this to him and said, okay, so let me ask you something. When science fails in front of you and you see something that isn't giving you the results that you should be getting logically and scientifically from every known rule of like physics or chemistry, do you just say, oh, things don't work the way I thought I did, and off yourself? Or do you say, okay, we need to look at this and find out what's going on? You know, like a scientist would. But no, in this book, they all just start killing themselves. And that's probably the dumbest thing in the book, but there's a lot of... Then you get to the actual science itself. We did a whole review video on it. I'll maybe link to that somewhere. But we talked about it a little bit on the Wordy Pair podcast, which is a play on the Dirty Pair because we love the Dirty Pair. And it was fun coming up with that name. We sat around for hours, and I was just like, well, I mean, we're going to talk about anime stuff one way or another. So why don't we try to work anime into it? And I don't know how I landed on the Wordy Pair, but we kind of were like, yeah, that might work. Because it's us talking about words. So we're being very wordy. And it worked out. So yeah, maybe I'll get Korenik on here sometime to talk some writing. But I don't know. I really didn't answer your USSR question, but I feel like we went to some good places, including not the USSR, which would not have been a good place to go to. And I don't know. There's still people to this day that think that that's not true. I was a kid when the USSR was still around, and I knew that it was bad news. And then I grew up and read everything. My tangents are crazy. I am convinced that I drive Korenik nuts sometimes when we're doing our Wordy Pair podcast, because I will just start going off on these wild tangents about the things we're talking about. And I can always try to tell sometimes that he's kind of corralling me back to where I belong. He won't outright say it, but it's like, oh, yep, okay. Hey, Korenik is, he's in my head, I'm just like, oh, like he'll interrupt with something. I'll be like, oh yeah, this is where I've gone too far. He's bringing it back around. Yeah, I do the tangents though. Mostly because I don't usually plan what I'm saying, and so I have to keep it going. Like, we don't plan the Wordy Pair podcast. We have an idea sometimes, and we just start talking about it and hope that it works. And we've got a pretty high success rate with that. I think there's only been a handful of times where we were just like, you know what, this is so bad, we're not even going to do it. And then one time I screwed up recording. That also did us in. Although, luckily, that was one of the ones we probably would have canned anyway. But yeah, I fully recommend, by the way, we did this awesome podcast on the... so one of our Wordy Pair episodes is about the MacGyver book. The MacGyver book episode is one of our favorite ones that we ever did. And if you listen to the whole thing, you will understand why. We go into great detail about the book that was the basis for the television show MacGyver back in the 80s. And yeah, you really do have to listen to the entire thing to understand why it's so good. But I'm giving you big promises with that one. So this has been my... Well, this has been your mom, Moment of Muppy. We're gonna, yeah, me and Korenik are gonna do a couple of different things with that in the future, and he'll actually be streaming. I don't know what he's streaming on Fridays, but he's streaming some games tonight, I think, at like 10 p.m. Eastern. He is not a VTuber, but he is a game streamer. He actually does a... Well, maybe he doesn't do a lot more projects than me, but he has different types of projects. Like, he does a lot of economics videos on his other channels. He does have a gaming channel, though, and it is Korenik. It's, I'm going to type it in the chat. It's K-O-R-U-N-I-C-K. and I like his videos. He has a really good. He's on Twitch and YouTube. His uploads on YouTube. He's got this Duskers video, where, yeah, go ahead. You can self promo. Yeah, there's not any really strict rules here. I will only be somewhat disappointed if people do things that get me banned from Twitch, but you know, I'm not much of a rule follower here anyway, so I'll probably get myself banned at some point. But yeah, anyone can promote. There's not really that many people looking, so I don't think this is the best place to advertise, but you're free to do so. Did I not follow you? I thought I followed you. I'll have to look it up. As soon as I'm done here, I will. Are you just under your current name? Or is it what? Lay it on me. What do we got? Okay, Atomic Red. Okay, I will look that up as soon as I close out here, because I have to get running in just a second. I'm hanging out with some friends, doing a bonfire in a minute. I was actually already supposed to be there, but then you brought up the USSR, and I was like, nope, we're staying for a minute. Well, thank you very much. Oh man, I'm terrible at impressions, which is why I'm thinking I might do some impressions here. It'll be funny. I'll be so bad at them that it'll just be like, yeah, this is laugh material. I gotta get my brother in on doing some of this, though, because he is also hilarious. We used to draw a lot of comics when we were kids. He went on to draw well. I continue to draw very, very poorly. There is actually a Muppy Heingart Substack that has some of my poorly drawn comics and actually more short stories that I didn't put on Amazon or anything. But that's for another day of shilling my wares, my free wares that I don't make money on. But yeah, my brother is absolutely hilarious, and his comics have. If you were to read our comics side by side, you'd be like, oh yeah, these two are definitely brothers, because we have the exact same sense of humor for the most part. Yeah, that's definitely the case. I don't want to say it's entirely passion over money, but if I never made money writing books, I would still write, because I do love doing it. I was 15 years old playing Discworld on the PlayStation. I had always done things like write little stories and draw comics, but after I played Discworld on the PlayStation, I was like, oh, these are based on books. And I went and found my first Discworld book. It was Eric. And it's actually, Eric is one of my least favorite of all of them, but that was the first one I found, and I loved it to death. And I was like, I should do this. I can write funny stuff, and I want to write stuff like this. So, like, all of my stuff is heavily influenced largely by Terry Pratchett, various anime from the 80s and 90s, and I recently, like in the past decade, got into Lovecraft. I think it was maybe 2016 or 2017, around that time, for about, well, let's say, oh yeah, objectively, old school anime is consistently better. I mean, there's a lot of real trash anime from that period, but even then, like, the trash was of a better quality. Like it was at least watchable trash, like a really bad Godzilla movie. Like I wasn't a big fan of the Legendary Pictures Godzilla movies. I think the second one was probably the best. I found the first one boring, and I hated it because of that. Because I'm just watching it like, you know, there are old Godzilla movies where Godzilla wasn't in it too much, but this movie was really pushing it, and they were doing it on purpose. I mean, they cut away from Godzilla the very first time they finally decided to show him. And I was just like, okay, are you serious? And this was after being teased with Godzilla about 20 times. So yeah, old school stuff in anime, it's like anyone who is just subsisting on the new stuff, which is, you're largely being spoon-fed Shonen Jump and a million isekais that all play out the same way. You need to go back and watch the old stuff, and I don't just say this as part of nostalgia. Like, go back and pay attention, especially if you're younger. Look at it through the eyes of, like, you're a teenager watching anime that you probably shouldn't be, and you're just like, oh, even the young people in these older anime have a bit of maturity to them. And that's kind of what drew a lot of us to it back in the mid 90s. Because we were still watching cartoons for, like, 10 to 14 year olds, but we were like 15 and 16. And now this anime thing shows up. Sci-Fi had their Saturday anime. Oh god, no, like modern anime, almost everyone is immature. And I think that says something about a lot of what has happened in Japanese culture in the past couple decades. I mean, this is another economics thing that I won't get into right now. But there is definitely a lot going on in Japan where it's just like, people have lost a lot of reason to move on to more mature things in their life because a lot of what is happening there is so depressing. I mean, they have a lot of similar problems that we have that we're starting to have in America, where it's like, you can't afford housing. It's too expensive to raise a family, so a lot more people are staying single. And people are like, in the 80s, it was like, you did kind of laugh when it was like, oh, you're in your 30s and you live with your parents. There wasn't that much of it back then, though. And when it was like either you had done something very, very wrong, or things just hadn't worked out for you. But like nowadays, we're talking, there are so many people like past 30 that can't afford a house. And it's even worse in Japan. And Japan has already had to cut the size of their housing down to virtually nothing compared to what we have here in America. And people still can't afford it. And now you're looking at this stuff on Amazon where it's like, here's a box that you can buy for like $15,000 so you can actually have your own home. And it'll arrive from Amazon and they'll just unfold it for you and that's your house. And that's actually kind of cool, but that's where we are. So yeah, I think that can lead to a lot of not immaturity, because I don't want to say those people are immature. I would be one of them. I mean, if I was in Japan right now, that would be me. But it's just like, when you don't have like a family to raise, or you can't afford to own a home and do things that you would do to keep a home up, it's like it's kind of like, okay, so my dad once told me that the reason he got into motorcycles was because he couldn't really afford cars at the time, and motorcycles were cheaper. Well, one of the reasons I got into computers was because I couldn't afford motorcycles. When I was a kid, I really wanted to get into motorcycles, but as I got older, I was like, I can't really afford a motorcycle. I can't even afford a car to get myself to work and back at the moment, and I'm trying to go to college. And so I just never got into doing much with motorcycles. Instead, it was computers. And now computers are expensive, and everyone uses phones, and I'm looking around like, what are people into now? And I know it's not VTubing, because VTubing is more expensive than the computers. You have to have the computer to VTube, unless you're doing it from your cell phone. So like, the stuff that you do to keep entertained is like, you study, you have hobbies, you teach yourself things, you maybe watch anime or get into various pop culture things. And then just to watch all of the pop culture murdering itself. I mean, I was a pretty big Doctor Who fan since the 80s. I used to watch Tom Baker I think they played him on PBS here in America during his run when it was like new, or when it was like still being like rebroadcast. And when they brought it back in 2005, I was pretty skeptical at first, and then my friends were like, no, this is awesome. And I was like, these are friends that I had never heard of talking about Doctor Who before. I remember talking to some of them and they had no idea what I was talking about. And now everyone was into it. And then just to watch what happened, where it's like, now nobody wants to watch it, and I've been so disillusioned by it that I don't think I would go back to it even if they were doing good things right now. Because there comes a point where you move on. Like, it's probably going to take me it would take a decade, probably, like 10 years from now, if they started up something good again, I might come back to it. But, like, I just couldn't trust them to have they would have 3 episodes that drew me in, and then the next 7 would just be, haha, gotcha. Yeah, the Doctor Who thing really leaves a sour taste in my mouth. It's just like, it was so good for so long, and I know a lot of people like dropped off after the 10th Doctor. Some dropped off after the 11th. I stuck it out through Peter Capaldi. I thought he was a great Doctor. I didn't like some of the episodes. The majority of them I enjoyed, but they were not as good as. I don't know, the 11th and 9th Doctor, I really liked their episodes. The 10th Doctor did a pretty good job of lore building, so I like those too. And probably of all the new Doctor Who, the Satan Pit was probably my favorite episode, because it introduced a villain that they're probably not going to go back to, but was very, very, like, unknown territory for the Doctor. And they told a pretty good story with that one overall. And they didn't really give you anything where it's like, you can't dig into this further, because the Doctor couldn't dig into this further. He has nothing that he can look into after the events that happened, and he probably doesn't want to. And the next thing I knew, the Doctor was blowing up people who were bad guys, but had kind of said, "Okay, I give, you win." And I was just like, no, this isn't how heroes behave. Like you can do the whole hero thing where the hero is questioning himself in the moment. They did it all the time in the new Doctor Who, but then the last two Doctors, it's kind of funny. The 6th Doctor, I believe, had a series called The Trials of the Time Lord. And in those episodes, it was revealed, like he was on trial, and the prosecutor was this vicious person who was really just trying to off the Doctor. And you found out from the Master, of all people, when he testified, you found out that the prosecutor was actually a version of the Doctor, basically the 13th Doctor, but the way they worded it was that somewhere between the 12th incarnation and the 13th incarnation of the Doctor, he became evil, and he was trying to kill himself to restore his own regenerations, get himself more lives. And so it's just funny that it actually worked out that after the 12th Doctor, the 13th Doctor started doing things that I was watching the show and like, this, the Doctor's evil now. This isn't what the Doctor does. And this will be like the 20th time I've left something that I've recorded on a Doctor Who note. But I guess I should get going. I can't really think of any funny way to end this. So yeah, I will have to get on the line with Cora Nick and see if I can get him to join us. It'll be fun. But yeah, I think he's streaming at like 10 p.m. Eastern tonight, so might be something worth checking out. But yeah, definitely, if you can find his YouTube channel and watch his Duskers video where he's doing it in character, it's great. Your quest, don't forget. What's the quest? What am I forgetting? I already forgot. Did I miss reading something? Let's see. Oh, I'm on a quest to be followed by... Oh, yeah. I will follow you right after I close this out. Are you, as long as you're on Twitch and I can find you by looking up Atomic Red, I will follow you. By all your wow-foos. Okay. Until next time, I guess. I like wow-foos. That's... Well, instead of husbandos, we'll call it wow-foos. Let's make that a thing. And woofums. I'm not a woofums. Alright. I will catch you later.